your flag decal won't get you into heaven anymore. They're already overcrowded from your dirty little war. Now Jesus don't like killing, no matter what the reason's for. And your flag decal won't get you into heaven anymore. Well, I went to the bank this morning and
We're with Paul Murphy from the Socialist Party, MEP for the Socialist Party, and we're in Pearse House today on a conference on EU, basically on EU, the military dimension. Paul, you're involved in Europe. The EU is a military, or vastly becoming a military organisation. How do you see it? What's happening is or confirmed that or deny that is the EU becoming a military organisation?
The EU and the European project is a project of the elites in Europe, big business elites in Europe, and it's an imperialist project of those elites. And increasingly that external imperialism, since the end of the Cold War, has a militarisation dimension. And more that process is speeding up. They don't do it openly. They don't say, okay, the European Union now has a European army, because they know you have massive opposition, not just in Ireland, but right across Europe. But openly in some ways, like with the European Defence Agency, but also covertly with things like a lot of money, 1.4 billion euros being spent on security research. They are pushing a militarisation agenda, and they'll take it really as far as they can get. And so there needs to be resistance.
Okay, you say is the European Union a military or an imperialist bloc?
I think it is. There's two characters, two sides of its imperialism. The internal imperialism, which is the dominance of the major capitalist powers, in particular Germany, and in particular increasingly finance capital, the banks, the bondholders, and their dominance over the peoples of Europe, and in particular the exploitation of the working class people, small farmers in the periphery of Europe. Of course, at the expense of German working class people, and with the slavish acceptance of the ruling classes of the periphery, like our own government, like our previous government. So that's kind of the internal imperialist agenda. But externally, it's about different capitalist powers in Europe putting aside some of their differences in order to be able to collectively, one, better exploit the countries of the south, the lesser developed countries, with trade deals that are very exploitative of their peoples and of their natural resources. It's to enable them to create a further periphery around Europe. These European neighbourhood policies is about integrating countries in the neighbourhood of Europe without letting them into Europe, without letting them have free movement in Europe, but making them sign up to all the neoliberal rules contained within Europe. And it's also then about competing with the US on the one hand, trying to become a major power, and also looking at the East and the rise of China and trying to compete with them. And you can find numerous quotes of establishment figures saying, okay, in order to do this broader project, you have to be able to back it up. You need power, and that means military.
Okay. And I don't mean to be flippant in any way, but you've just described an organisation I certainly wouldn't want to subscribe to. The Socialist Party, do their long-term aims to stay in the European Union?
We need a fundamentally different Europe. We're not anti-Europe in the sense of peoples of Europe coming together. But the European Union is certainly a project that is entirely against the interests of working class people, ordinary people in Ireland and all across Europe. What we need is a struggle to try and build a fundamentally different type of Europe. We need to break with the austerity policies, we need to break with the militarisation policies, and that will result in a very significant clash with the establishment within Europe, with the European Commission, with the European Central Bank. But also we need to do that as much as is possible in a coordinated way with other peoples in Greece and Portugal and Spain, also in Germany and countries of the north. And then on the ruins of the old Europe, try to build a fundamentally different type of Europe, a socialist Europe.
So you're saying it can be reformed, or it has to be smashed and re-established?
I think the European Union cannot be reformed. The European Union, the rules of the European Union, neoliberalism, right-wing capitalist policies are hammered in. The whole thing is completely undemocratic. If people were to break from those neoliberal rules, the countries would lose their votes at the European Council level. So it is irreformable. It needs to be smashed effectively, and then a new Europe needs to be built.
Okay, yeah, but I mean, I don't think I think most people, when they think of Europe and European people, want unity and want cohesion on equal basis. Obviously, we don't have that at the moment. PANA and Shannon. You know about Shannon, you know about the military hub in Shannon. In the Dáil, is there a possibility of highlighting that? I mean, the Labour Party initially said that they were going to oppose. I talked to a Labour Party MEP. She told me that the Labour Party is totally opposed to the hub as it stands. What is the possibility of changing that through the democratic means here in Ireland?
The issue is that the establishment parties, which is Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, but also clearly the Labour Party, are slavish in their acceptance of the European Union militarisation project, but they're also connected to the US imperialist project. And so, I mean, they just do whatever is asked of them. That's the reality. Ask no questions, unless they're forced to ask questions. And so the only way I think it can happen, it won't happen in the Dáil in isolation, but you need to try and redevelop a movement around the question of Shannon, create enough public pressure on the politicians to mean that it's to force them to do something about it, because it's just a joke. I mean, I have a Labour Youth magazine at home. I remember from years ago, I was going through my archives, and the back of it is "Get the US military out of Shannon, vote Labour Party." You know, and the US military has just been through Shannon again, heading towards Syria, and does it regularly. I just talked to a chap there from Holland. He's the anti militarisation from Holland, and basically his idea is that there has to be a link made between the austerity of the EU and the spend on militarisation. Do you agree with that? Yeah, I think that's absolutely correct, because you look at the level of debt built up by Greece, by Portugal, by Spain, a large portion of which came from militarisation. There's a guy, there was an assistant, an advisor to the former Greek Prime Minister, who said, when you talk to these European leaders, they don't quite say that you have to sign these military contracts, otherwise we won't help you. But it's implied. If you sign the military contracts, then maybe you can get some assistance. And like an important part of the odious, illegitimate debt of the countries of the South is because of grandiose military schemes, which hasn't benefited people anywhere. It's just benefited the armaments corporations in Europe. So it's really necessary to make that link, because they're cutting back on everything in Europe except militarisation. And so that's a link immediately. The other link is where this debt has come from. And then the other link that I think is important is like the internal militarisation of Europe. Like in Greece, you have, like, strikes have been militarised in the sense that they've ruled strikes completely illegal on a number of occasions now, and then mobilised the troops to do the work of metro workers, of dock workers in Greece, and things that haven't happened before. But also you have a sharing of information between the different police agencies about crowd control, about all that stuff. And so that's another aspect whereby they're militarising in order to stop the struggles against. They've
also closed down TV stations in Greece in order to obviously to stop the details of that coming out. Just for the future, I mean, you're in Europe. What is the power balance is there? I mean, obviously you're there. You're saying, I presume you're saying in Europe, you're saying the same thing in Europe as you're saying to me now. So, is there many people in Europe saying this, and what is the strategy there to advance?
Yeah, I mean, genuine left socialist people in the European Parliament are a minority. In the left group, there's 34 MEPs. There are a reasonable number within the Green group who might have 40, 45, who would take a good position on these questions of militarisation, and there might be some in the Social Democrats. That's out of a parliament of over 750. So we're a small minority. After the next European elections, the left forces are likely to grow, and that's positive, but not enough to have a majority. The majority will still be held by Social Democrats, the European Peoples Party, who are indistinguishable in terms of their actions. Not indistinguishable in terms of their rhetoric, but in terms of their actions and really their voting record on most things. So again, a bit like in the Dáil, I think the key question is building movements from below and from outside. We can be a voice inside the Parliament saying, look, this is what's happening, this is really important. Try to use the platform to mobilise people, to organise people. But if you don't get movements from below against war, against militarisation, against where Europe is going, well then we won't be able to win votes or win victories in the Parliament itself.
Listen, Paul, thanks very much for your time, and best of luck in that European Union.
Thank you very much.
Your flag decal won't get you into heaven anymore. They're already overcrowded from your dirty little war. Now Jesus don't like killing, no matter what the reasons for. And your flag decal won't get you into heaven anymore.